Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu, and with me is Abhineet Shukla, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India asserts UNSC resolution should shape world's response to Afghanistan. In Japan, ruling party's top politician Taro Kono likely to replace Yoshihide Suga as the Prime Minister. In Bangladesh, High Court orders shutdown of unregistered online news portals within a week. Delhi Police Special Cell bursts terror module, arrests 6 including 2 Pakistan-trained terrorists in a multi-state raid. Tropical storm Nicholas downgraded from hurricane after making landfall on Texas coast. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. Foreign Secretary of India Harshvardhan Shringla has said the resolution specifically refers to terror groups designated by the UN and the need for the safe departure of all those who want to leave Afghanistan. Mr. Shringla on Tuesday said the world's community approach to Afghanistan should be in line with the UN Security Council Resolution 2593, which demands Afghan soil shouldn't be used in any way for terrorism and seeks an inclusive and negotiated settlement to the crises in the war-torn country. He said the resolution adopted during India's presidency of the Security Council last month specifically refers to terror groups designated by the UN such as Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed and the need for the safe departure of all those who want to leave Afghanistan.
In a significant political development in Japan, a top politician in country's ruling party, Taro Kono, is all set to replace Yoshihide Suga as a Prime Minister. The move comes after another top contender, Shigeru Ishiba, has opted not to stand in the race for the Prime Minister's post and is considering supporting Taro Kono. It is reported that the move could increase Kono's chances of taking over from outgoing Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga as head of the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, as Ishiba is well linked by rank-and-file party members. Kono, currently the minister in charge of Japan's vaccination drive, is considered a leading contender to replace Suga after a surprise announcement this month that he would not seek to stay on in the post. The vote to elect new Prime Minister will be held on the 29th of September. The Bangladesh High Court on Tuesday ordered the authorities to shut down all unregistered online news portals in the country within a week. A report from our Dhaka correspondent.
A division bench of the court passed the order on the plea filed by advocates from Bangladesh. The court in its order told the Bangladesh Telecom Regulatory Commission and the chairman of Bangladesh Press Council to execute the order within 7 days of getting the copy of this order. The writ was filed by the lawyers following media coverage of an incident in April in which a 21-year-old woman committed suicide, allegedly mentioning the name of a prominent business personality of Bangladesh in her suicide note. The petitioners contended that the online portals in the country are running defamatory reports amounting to character assassination of people. Earlier, the High Court in its order on August 16 had sought response from the authorities as to why an ethical code of conduct should not be formed for news media and a broadcasting commission set up for the electronic media, as well as putting a ban on the unregistered online news portals. Rajesh Jha, Yaya News, Dhaka.
In India, the Delhi Police Special Cell has busted a Pakistan-organized terror module by arresting 6 people, including 2 terrorists who received training in Pakistan. The suspects were planning to carry out terror attack in some major cities of the country. Briefing reporters in New Delhi, Delhi Police Special Cell Special Commissioner Neeraj Thakur said the raids were conducted in several states as part of the operation. He said one person was arrested from Kota in Rajasthan, 2 persons were arrested from Delhi and 3 from Uttar Pradesh. Mr. Thakur said the police has recovered explosives, firearms and ammunition from their possession.
दिल्ली पुलिस के स्पेशल सेल को टेरर के खिलाफ मुहिम में एक बड़ी सफलता मिली है। एक मल्टी स्टेट ऑपरेशन में हमने 6 लोगों को गिरफ्तार करा है। खास बात इसमें यह है कि इन 6 में 2 आदमी ऐसे भी हैं जो कि पाकिस्तान में जाकर इसी साल ट्रेनिंग कर वापस आए। केंद्रीय एजेंसी से हमें एक इनपुट मिला था। भारत के कुछ प्रमुख शहरों में कुछ आतंकी घटनाएं करने की एक साजिश हो रही है जो कि बॉर्डर के उस पार से है। इस सीरियस इनपुट को देखते हुए दिल्ली पुलिस के स्पेशल सेल ने एक खास टीम कॉन्स्टिट्यूट करी। जब ह्यूमन और टेक्निकल इनपुट एनालाइज किया गया तो देखा कि ये तो कई स्टेट्स में फैला हुआ एक काफी बड़ा नेटवर्क है।
Chinese authorities are rushing to contain a widening Delta variant outbreak in the southern province of Fujian ahead of a major upcoming national holiday, when hundreds of millions of people are expected to travel across the country. A report from our Beijing correspondent.
Fujian outbreak, despite China's much-touted tough zero-COVID policy, is a matter of concern ahead of the week-long National Day holiday beginning on 1st October. Repeated outbreaks have also put question marks on the sustainability of China's zero-COVID policy and the crushing border restrictions, which have also discriminated against 11 countries, including India, by blocking their visas. China has not shown any signs of issuing visas to Indians, which have been stopped since November 2020. China has recently allowed chambers of commerce from Germany, France and Italy to bring back their employees and family members to China. In response to a question in this regard today, Chinese Foreign Ministry said that with reference to the practices of other countries, China adjusts its management measures on inbound travelers accordingly as the epidemic situation evolves. Anshuman Mishra, World News, All India Radio, Beijing.
Prime Minister of India Mr. Narendra Modi will participate in the Leaders Summit of the Quadrilateral Framework in Washington, D.C. on 24th of September, along with Prime Minister of Australia Scott Morrison, Prime Minister of Japan Yoshihide Suga and US President Joseph R. Biden. The leaders will review progress made since their first virtual summit on 12th March this year and discuss regional issues of shared interest.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on Prime Minister's visit to USA. In conversation are Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be traveling to the United States next week to participate along with Prime Minister Scott Morrison of Australia, Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga of Japan, and the US President Joe Biden, who will be the host for the first ever in-person Leaders Summit of the Quadrilateral Framework in Washington, D.C. on September 24th. The leaders will review the progress made since their first virtual summit on 12th of March 2021 and discuss other regional issues of shared interest. Now, the interesting thing is that this quadrilateral of democracies has raised its profile over the past year, and after conducting a series of multilateral military exercises together, appears set to become some kind of a fairly powerful bloc to promote multilateral cooperation. And in fact, India has now raised the level of engagement individually with each Quad member to an annual 2+2 format of defense ministers and foreign ministers between our and their defense ministers and foreign ministers. So in fact, the first such meeting with Australia just got over, prompting China to get rather antsy. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee joins us this evening to outline the significance of the quadrilateral of democracies and this forthcoming summit of the 4 leaders. Given the global situation, clearly events that have taken place in Afghanistan will form a major focus of their discussions. So good evening, Ambassador, and would you please tell us why the meeting of Quad leaders in person is so important at this point of time?
Thank you, Nilova. First of all, let me begin by saying that the Quad is now an important grouping in a new world order which has been created due to the rise of China, its aggressive policies in the South China Sea and in the Indo-Pacific and towards its neighbors. In a way, the Quad responds to the new realities of the time and even more so after the withdrawal, rather hasty withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan, the power vacuum which has been created as a result, the manner in which that power vacuum has been filled by Pakistan, and the efforts by China to move into Afghanistan, not just through the BRI, but also to use it to enhance Pakistan's strategic space vis-a-vis India. This is the first meeting of the Quad which is taking place after what has happened in Afghanistan. This is also the first meeting between our Prime Minister and the US President, and the fact that the US President decided to make it an in-person meeting and that we have our Raksha Mantri and our External Affairs Minister also adds an added dimension and importance to this meeting, and the fact that we've already had our bilaterals with Australia. So Australia has now become, despite its initial hesitation because of its earlier compulsions with regard to trade with China, Australia now has become a very, very important part of the Quad mechanism, and Australia has also moved much closer to India in the last couple of years. So all in all, I do expect that the Quad meeting, which will take place later today, American time, will throw out some information with regard to how the Quad intends to engage between themselves with the neighbors in the Indo-Pacific, keeping in mind two very important red lines. One is Taiwan, and the other, of course, are the aggressive intentions of China towards its neighbors, especially India. So I think we would definitely benefit by the support that would be extended to us also, because we are in a very tricky situation where we have a hostile China on the rise, moving into the strategic space vacated by US and Afghanistan, an extremely aggressive Pakistan that is trying to divert attention by talking about India's aggressive intentions rather than acknowledging that it is going to use Afghanistan to try and launch jihadis against us in Kashmir. All in all, this is an extremely good time for us, Nilüfer, for us to discuss with our Quad friends and allies, and also to lay bare our worries strategically in the new situation and scenario facing India after the sudden collapse of Kabul and the whole of Afghanistan now to the Taliban, and given the fact that the new Taliban government is full of hardliners, and many of whom are on the UN sanctions list, and ironically, India is the chairman of the UN Security Council Sanctions Committee.
Harshadi, it's very interesting that you should particularly point out the fact that, China's aggression and the fact that they're in alliance with Pakistan and the kinds of things that they've been saying. In fact, today the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman has gone sort of apoplectic in terms of, talking about this Quad summit. So clearly there's something that we are doing right in terms of this quadrilateral for China to get as antsy as it is. And next week is also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, which will be in a virtual format. So the timing again of the Quad Leaders Summit on the 24th is very, very significant, I think, and clearly intended to send a message to China, would you say?
Definitely, because the fact that the Chinese are rattled is clear by the fact that they try to develop their own counter Quad, if I may use that terminology. It hasn't really taken off, frankly. And the fact that they are antsy, that they are upset, is because they understand clearly that in the present scenario, where the NATO membership include Turkey, which is allied to China, the Quad actually right now is the only grouping which could realistically take on the Herculean job of containing China. And the Chinese know it, because what is the membership of Quad but the most powerful countries in the region and United States? So, you have Australia, India, Japan. That's a very powerful combination along with United States. And these are also countries with powerful navies. And if there's one thing that the Chinese do not have, not their strong point, is their navy. They've always been a continental territorial power. So despite their efforts to spread their wings in the South China Sea and in the Indian Ocean, the point is, if they have to threaten Taiwan from the sea, and that is something that can be countered by the very powerful navies of the Quad countries. So these are also red lines that the Quad is putting in place, which is much required if China is to be halted inexorable march towards militarizing this region. There are articles floating in social media, Nilova, article written 8 years ago, but which set out China's ambition, and that includes Taiwan and Meghalaya, apart from Tibet. So it clearly shows China's naked ambition, which can only be countered now by United States and the Quad.
Bhaswati, the post-COVID global economic recovery is also obviously going to form another very significant part of the discussions that the leadership of the Quad countries will have. And countries with economic heft are those that will threaten China again. And China is very proud of its economic boom, rightly so. The only other way that they can really be countered is through massive economic cooperation amongst, say, countries like democracies of the Quad. So again, the vaccine initiative, for example, that they had at their first virtual summit, these kinds of things, how much of an impact do you think these ideas and initiatives would have on the global community, or at least the regional community?
But you would recall, Nilofa, that their last summit, when the vaccine initiative was discussed, at that time India had not been struck down by the second wave, which was so devastating, and the Delta variant. We were really not able to deliver the number of vaccines that had been envisaged. But now we would be in a position, hopefully by the end of December, to be able to take that project forward. In the meantime, there have been outbreaks of the Delta variant in China. So yesterday there were media reports about the Delta variant breaking out in another part of China. So the point is that the Chinese are now understanding that nobody is immune from this virus that they have unleashed on the world, including themselves. And definitely in the post-COVID recovery period, the vaccine diplomacy, which was initially discussed in their last summit, would definitely be discussed at this summit, because the world is looking to countries like India to see whether we can provide them with a much cheaper COVID-19 vaccine, because we've always done that. We did it for HIV/AIDS, if you remember. And the other issue is how we can get together to rebuild those parts of our economy which have been particularly touched, all the countries concerned. That includes the hospitality sector, the air travel, tourism, certain aspects of trade. I'm sure that these would be important parts of the agenda, and there would definitely be discussions on how to cooperate on vaccine diplomacy, given the fact that earlier the Quad nations had decided that they would get together and help out, for instance, Africa. So this could certainly be part of their discussion on the 24th.
The Prime Minister is also scheduled to address the general debate of the high-level segment of the next session of the United Nations General Assembly. He will be addressing them on the 25th. And this year's theme, again, blends very well with the post-COVID recovery part of it, talking about building resilience through hope to recover from COVID-19, rebuild sustainably, respond to the needs of the planet, and respect the rights of people, and revitalize the United Nations. So for the four democracies that will be meeting in the Quad format, these are all aspects of multilateralism which they are trying to promote. Wouldn't you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. In fact, it's quite a coincidence that even when we had the BRICS summit, the theme suggested by India was quite similar. And when our PM will address the UN General Assembly high-level segment, he will definitely talk about India's experience in combating COVID, how we put our resources together. We are still a developing country. We developed our vaccine. Our efforts to vaccinate 1.3 billion people. How many have we vaccinated so far with the first dose? The manner in which we are now pushing through the vaccination program on a daily basis. All these are experiences which the UN will look forward to our sharing with them, because it's quite unique the manner in which we have actually handled the COVID crisis. It's a lesson to many parts of the world. We would also talk about our developmental models and how, despite every handicap, we have always tried to reach out and help other countries, developing countries, and we've also tried to share our experiences. So I think these are all issues that we are going to discuss at the UN General Assembly, a high-level segment, and maybe combined weight of the Quad countries who would be addressing the UN General Assembly might help to forge a consensus on some of these important
opportunity. So it's very clear that this summit of Quad leaders will be providing a very valuable opportunity for dialogue and interactions, finally in-person format, because I think, as you would know, it's very, very important for the leadership of countries to be meeting each other and interacting so that they can actually get their messages across. I'd like your comment on that before we sort of wind up for the day.
I completely agree with you, Nilüfer. I remember when we had a similar discussion about the virtual BRICS summit, the point I made was, as a practitioner of diplomacy, that there is a great difference between the body language and the results of a physical summit and a virtual summit, especially in this particular case, because it's also the first meeting of our Prime Minister with the US President. So, and on his home ground in New York City. So I think that this physical summit and the fact that President Biden went out of the way to organize it also demonstrates the very strong Quad connect and the very strong US-India connect. This is something that needs to be reiterated at a time when there have been questions raised about how much US-India strategic partnership matters. It matters a hell of a lot, actually. And the fact that it's taking place at such a crucial time also demonstrates how much US and the other countries care for the India connection and the India partnership. So all in all, the fact that our PM is going there, that there's going to be this actual summit is a huge feather in the cap for India and for India's diplomacy. And it also demonstrates how important India is multilaterally and how important India is in the struggle to maintain international peace and security in the face of a rising and aggressive China. Nilüfer.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mukherjee. It was a pleasure talking to you.
India has assured ASEAN partners of its support in its recovery efforts in the post-pandemic period. Minister of State for Commerce and Industry Anupriya Patel and Minister of Finance and Economy of Brunei Darussalam Dr. Amin Liu Abdullah on Tuesday virtually co-chaired the 18th ASEAN-India Economic Ministers Consultation. The meeting was attended by the economic ministers of all the 10 ASEAN countries: Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand and Vietnam. The ministers took stock of the current pandemic situation and reaffirmed their commitment to take collective actions in mitigating the economic impact of the pandemic and ensuring resilient supply chains in the region. The ministers appreciated the deepening trade and investment between ASEAN. India is ASEAN's 7th largest trading partner and one of the largest sources of foreign direct investment.
The RBI and the Monetary Authority of Singapore have announced a project to link their respective fast payment system, Unified Payments Interface, UPI and PayNow. The linkage is targeted for operationalization by July 2022. According to an RBI press statement, the UPI PayNow linkage will enable users of each of the two fast payment systems to make instant, low-cost fund transfers on a reciprocal basis without a need to get onboarded onto the other payment system. UPI is India's mobile-based fast payment system that facilitates customers to make round-the-clock payments instantly using a virtual payment address created by the customer. This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Tropical storm Nicholas has been downgraded from a hurricane after making landfall on the Texas coast in the U.S., bringing heavy rain and the risk of life-threatening flooding. The storm was upgraded to a hurricane after reaching land but has now been weakened. President Joe Biden declared an emergency in Louisiana. It comes just weeks after Hurricane Ida, the 5th strongest to ever hit the U.S. mainland, killing dozens and left more than 1 million Louisiana residents without power. Meanwhile, Texas Governor Greg Abbott declared states of emergency in 17 counties and 3 cities. Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner warned of flooding and urged the city's roughly 2.3 million residents to stay off streets and motorways. Dozens of schools across the 2 states have been closed and hundreds of flights have been cancelled or delayed at airports in the Texas cities of Corpus Christi and Houston. Top nuclear envoys from Japan, the United States and South Korea have held talks in Tokyo on Tuesday to discuss North Korea's missile and nuclear programs. The development took place a day after Pyongyang said it tested a new long-range cruise missile. Analysts said the weapon, described by North Korean state media as strategic, could have nuclear capabilities. The three countries have been discussing ways to break a standoff with North Korea over its nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs, which have drawn international sanctions. The White House has said that the US was still prepared to engage with Pyongyang despite the recent missile test.
Qatar on Tuesday said that it would not take responsibility of Kabul airport without clear agreements with all involved, including the Taliban, about its operations. Doha has become a key broker in Afghanistan following last month's withdrawal of US forces, helping evacuate thousands of foreigners and Afghans, engaging the new Taliban rulers and supporting operations at Kabul airport. Since the US pullout, Qatar Airways planes have made several trips to Kabul, flying in aid and Doha's representatives and ferrying out foreign passport holders. And now a report from the business world.
At the stock markets, the Sensex at the Bombay Stock Exchange gained 69 points or 0.1% to end at 58,247 today. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange added 25 points to 17,380. At the domestic forex market, the rupee ended flat at 73 rupees and 68 paise against the US dollar. Among the global markets, the Asian stock markets ended mixed. So Japan's Nikkei index rose 0.7%, closed at more than 31-year high. South Korea's Kospi index also ended 0.7% higher, and Singapore's Straits Times index edged up 2.2%. But China's Shanghai Composite Index ended 1.4% lower, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index slipped 1.2%, and in Europe, London's FTSE 100 had fallen 0.4%, France's CAC 40 had dropped 0.6%, and Germany's DAX had shed 0.2% in the intraday trade. Global crude oil prices hit a 6-week high today as another hurricane threatened to bring heavy rain to Texas and parts of Louisiana that were still recovering from Ida, and the International Energy Agency forecast a big demand rebound for the rest of the year. So Brent crude futures rose 50 cents to trade at $74.01 a barrel, and US crude futures gained 43 cents to $70.88 a barrel. Nishit Kumar for World News, All India Radio.
The UEFA Champions League, Europe's biggest club competition, begins this evening with Manchester United kick off their campaign away to the Swiss champions Young Boys. Today, Manchester United will be looking to extend their unbeaten start to the new season. In other match, Sevilla FC is playing with Red Bull Salzburg.
Now let's take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Washington Post writes, Pew Research survey finds people around the world see climate change as a major threat. The Wall Street Journal says Taliban's pledge of amnesty for security officials meets widespread distrust. Financial Times reports pace of US consumer price rises cools slightly in August. The Washington Post says British government to start booster shots for vulnerable populations next week. The Wall Street Journal reports Google fined $177 million in South Korea over thwarting potential Android rivals. Financial Times writes former UK hedge fund partner plots return of Trump-era social network Parler. The Globe and Mail reports Raducanu can become one of the world's most marketable athletes.
A quick look at the headlines once again. India asserts UNSC resolution should shape world's response to Afghanistan. In Japan, ruling party's top politician Taro Kono likely to replace Yoshihide Suga as the Prime Minister. In Bangladesh, High Court orders shutdown of unregistered online news portals within a week. Delhi Police Special Cell busts terror module, arrests 6 including 2 Pakistan-trained terrorists in a multi-state raid. And Tropical Storm Nicholas downgraded from hurricane after making landfall on Texas coast. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Bhutan.
Vaishnav Jan
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.